Welcome back to the IBSP. Here's your host, Boxing New.
Terrence Crawford is about to be the GOAT? Look, let's break it down honestly and objectively as possible. And Chris Algieri from ProBox TV states that Terrence Crawford is on track to being the best fighter who has ever lived in the history of the sport of boxing. Now, I have to disagree with this 100,000% because it makes no sense. But I will tell you this, Terrence Crawford is a great fighter. He's a pound-for-pound fighter, and he deserves respect for all the things he's accomplished in the sport of boxing. Look, let me break it down. First off, Terrence Bud Crawford is a three-weight world champion. He's been undisputed 2 times, once at 140 pounds and once at 147. And what I will tell you is that's an excellent running. He's had a great career. He's a certified Hall of Famer. No disrespect or hate towards Bud Crawford, and he's a certified pound-for-pound fighter right now. But one problem with Bud Crawford and why he can never be considered as the GOAT or, coming close to that status is that he only has one legitimate name on his resume. You can have all the accolades and accomplishments you want, but if you're not actually fighting the best fighters in the world, you can't be considered the best. All of these guys are C and D level fighters. You only got one top name, and that was Errol Spence Jr. You get credit for it, but you can't have that many fights only fighting one top names and say, well, look at these accomplishments. They're hollow because you're not fighting anybody. You're not fighting any killers. You're never putting yourself at risk. This is what we're talking about. How many top names has Terrence Crawford fought in their prime? How many top names have he fought? Just one, and that's Errol Spence Jr. We've even seen Terrence Crawford's own trainer, Bomac, says, Errol Spence Jr. was hyped up. He was a hype job, and he was hyped by the media as a great fighter. They don't even consider him a top name. So that's their opinion, but I will give him credit for it. I will say, you get credit for beating Errol Spence. You get a cookie for it, but you're still nowhere near being the greatest fighter that ever lived, no matter what anybody says. I understand there's a lot of Terrence Crawford fanboys out there and delusional people about this, but at the end of the day, having a bunch of C and D level fighters winning these weak belts don't mean anything if you're not fighting the monsters to get them. Let me break it down. His next fight against Israel Madrimov, they're already hyping up this guy. And look at Israel Madrimov. I don't think it's a bad fight, but it's not an elite fight. It's not a top pound for pound fight. It's nothing like that. People have been hyping up Madrimov for no reason. No reason. He's a good little fighter, but he's nothing special. And let me break it down. First off, Madrimov has only had 11 fights. That's it. He's only had 11 fights, and in those 11 fights, the man has never been tested. He's currently unproven. We don't know what his chin is really like. We don't know what his power really like. We don't know what his skill set is really like, and we don't know what it's like when he faces adversity. We have not seen that from Madrimov. Now, we've seen a lot of holes in his game, but we have not seen him be a 100% complete fighter. We have not seen him be a pound-for-pound elite fighter because he's fought nobody. He also won a vacant title. That vacant world championship that he won belongs to Jermell Charlo. So at the end of the day, Terrence Crawford fighting a dude with 11 fights who's unproven and who won a vacant belt is not equivalent to Canelo fighting a Triple G. It's just simply not. It's not equivalent to an elite fight. You gotta match this guy up with an elite fighter, a pound-for-pound fighter, and Israel Madrimov is not that. This fight, Terrence Crawford is going to be an overwhelming favorite in this fight because everything's on his side. Madrimov's not proven, won a vacant belt, and only has 11 fights. What's really in his favor? Explain that to me. Terrence Crawford even has a reach and height advantage. I don't understand how anybody would believe Madrimov has a chance. Terrence Crawford is an overwhelming favorite in this fight. See, at the end of the day, if Terrence Crawford wants to be considered the GOAT, then he needs to fight another 3 or 4 top fighters. And what I mean by top fighters is not guys like Madrimov, but I'm talking about elite fighters, pound for pound fighters. And he has to beat those 3 or 4 fighters in dominant knockout fashion, because that's the same way that he beat Errol Spence and all these other C and D level fighters. Show me that you did everything throughout your career the same way against elite pound-for-pound fighters, then you will have a chance. It's not about winning a belt here or there from a guy who won a vacant title or a guy who won 11 fights or an Ndongu or anybody like that. We're talking about Terrence Crawford sitting down and fighting guys, another 3 or 4 top elite pound for pound fighters and dominate them the way that he dominated Ngannou, the way that he dominated Jeff Horn. Show me in that fashion that you can do that across the board, then I can consider you a great fighter, because then you have about 5 top names on your resume and you've dominated everybody. Never had a close fight, never had a controversial fight. But you can't say that when you only have one legitimate name on your resume. You simply can't. Anybody arguing this is a moron. I'm so sorry, you are. I mean, at the end of the day, Terence Crawford is a great fighter, an excellent fighter, but he has to beat more than one top fighter in his career. He has to beat more than 2 top fighters in his career. He has to beat more than 3 top fighters in his career if you want to label him the greatest of all time. And that's facts and never feelings.